All right, so get this. We're going deep today into a family story. It's really like something out of a movie or a TV show, all that drama. The Chrisleys.
Yeah.
The Chrisleys. We're talking about Todd the dad, big personality. And his son Kyle, he's had a tough time. You might know them from their reality show, Chrisley Knows Best. But what we're looking at is a lot more than just what you saw on TV.
Yeah, what really hits you is how different they seem on the show compared to all the legal problems they had.
Yeah.
It makes you think how much of reality TV is, actually real.
Exactly. And to really get into it, we've got police reports, court documents, even news articles. We want to see what really went down with the Chrisleys. So, yeah, get ready. This one's a wild ride.
It is. It is. You see how complicated families can be, how fame and money can mess things up, and how good and bad choices, well, they all have consequences.
For sure. Let's start with Kyle Chrisley's story. It's a whole bunch of legal issues, starting back in 2013 with a domestic violence case in South Carolina.
This early incident, it's important. It kind of shows a pattern of behavior that we see with Kyle later on, too. Instability and aggression.
Okay, so picture this. It's 2013. Kyle's 22 years old. A fight breaks out with Angela Johnson, the mother of his baby daughter, Chloe. And according to what the Anderson County Sheriff's Office says, things got out of hand pretty quick.
The police reports say that Kyle hit Angela and then threatened her sister with a knife. So that led to charges, criminal domestic violence, and assault and battery.
And here's the thing. When Chrisley Knows Best premiered in 2014, and Kyle was on it for a bit, he was actually a wanted man. Did you know that?
Yeah, authorities even put out a bulletin asking for help finding him. The addresses they had for him, they were old or just plain wrong.
Yeah.
Looks like he was trying to avoid those charges in South Carolina.
It sounds like he was trying to get away from a bad situation, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it could be. Avoiding responsibility, that can often be a sign of deeper issues, like maybe not being able to deal with consequences or not having support to fix the real problem.
Yeah, good point. Okay, jump ahead to 2017. We find Kyle in Madison, Georgia. Another incident. This time, it's a storage unit burglary.
This case, it gives you some context. Kyle's wife at the time, Alexis, she'd talked to the storage owner about taking their stuff out. But it seems like they had an argument about the payment.
So instead of working it out, things went bad.
That's right. Security cameras caught Kyle using bolt cutters to break into the unit. And the U-Haul truck he rented, well, that's how they figured out it was him.
Sounds like that impulsive behavior again, right? Makes you wonder, was he desperate? Or was it a bigger problem with making decisions?
Yeah, good question. You could think about how stress might have affected him. Maybe money problems or just feeling overwhelmed. Could that have led to this, impulsive decision?
And then things get worse. 2019. This is when we really see Kyle's problems with drugs and mental health.
This time period, it's full of bad stuff. It shows how complicated Kyle's life was. Yeah, he did some bad things, but you have to see that it's tied to his personal struggles. We need to understand that.
Definitely. In early 2019, his wife, his estranged wife by then, Alexis, she reported him in Georgia for sending death threats in texts, like, not before I end you, and if I'm not with you, nobody will be. That kind of stuff.
Those threats, plus he was using drugs, there was even a photo of him with a gun, all that led a judge in DeKalb County to issue a warrant for his arrest. Terroristic threats, it's serious stuff. They wanted to scare people, cause trouble. There was a real chance of violence there.
And what did Kyle do? He vanished. Months later, the police in Oklahoma pull him over for a broken headlight. That's it, something small.
But get this, the traffic stop takes a turn. They find what looks like crystal meth in his car.
So a routine stop turns into a big problem.
Right. They arrested him, put him in the Ocmulgee County Jail, felony possession of meth. But remember that warrant from Georgia? That caught up with him in Oklahoma. Now he's in trouble in 2 states.
Wow, so many consequences all at once.
So the Oklahoma prosecutors, they dropped the drug charges. Seems the meth wasn't directly on him, so that made the case tricky. They thought the Georgia charges were more serious, so they sent him back to face those terroristic threat charges. Booked him, processed him, and let him go on his own recognizance.
That means they released him without bail, right?
Right. Doesn't mean the charges went away, just that he could stay free while waiting for trial. And this is also when things really went bad between Kyle and his family, especially with Todd. Todd had custody of Kyle's daughter, Chloe, because of Kyle's problems. And their relationship, well, it was really messed up. Everyone knew it.
A family falling apart, fighting inside and outside.
Yeah. And there were reports that Kyle tried to commit suicide around this time. It's just sad, all of it. It shows how important it is to deal with mental health, especially with addiction, too.
It's just heartbreaking, everything he was going through. And it's like, when you think it can't get worse, it does.
In 2023, Kyle's in Smyrna, Tennessee, trying to rebuild his life, married, working at a truck rental company. Seems like he's doing better. But at the same time, Todd and Julie Chrisley, they start their prison sentences for fraud. Hard to imagine how that affected Kyle. Trying to move on, but his life is falling apart.
And in the middle of all this, another violent incident. March 2023. A fight at work, and this time it gets physical.
The Smyrna Police Department says Kyle got into it with his supervisor. It escalated, became a physical fight, and Kyle pulled out a knife.
People who saw it said Kyle was threatening to kill his boss, hitting him too. The supervisor ended up with injuries, bruises, and cuts on his head, hand, and neck.
It was serious. They charged Kyle with felony aggravated assault. That means it was really bad because he used a weapon and could have really hurt the guy.
So he turned himself in, got released on bond, meaning he paid money to be free until the trial. But then the charges were dropped, April 2023, before the trial even started. Court records don't say why.
Later, Kyle said on social media that he was defending himself. Whatever happened, this incident shows that Kyle was still using violence when there was conflict.
Like every time he tries to get back on track, something pulls him back down.
Right.
Fast forward to September 2024. Police are called to Kyle's home in Rutherford County, Tennessee again.
This time, it was a fight between Kyle and another guy. And like a lot of Kyle's run-ins with the law, the details are fuzzy.
Right. It's not clear what happened. We know Kyle got arrested, charged with aggravated assault and resisting arrest.
But Kyle says he was the victim. He says the other guy was threatening him, trying to extort money from him for months.
And he even went on Instagram, posted a photo of himself being arrested, saying the guy threatened his kid, messed up his property, he was mad that he couldn't defend himself in his home.
He even said maybe the police went after him because of his last name. You know, like they wanted to be famous for arresting a Chrisley.
That's a bold statement. Makes you wonder if his family's fame affected how the police treated him. Anyway, this 2024 case, it's still going on. We don't know what'll happen.
What's clear is that Kyle Chrisley's life has been full of violence and legal problems. His addiction, his mental health, they definitely played a part.
Yeah.
But you have to think, how much did his choices and his family make things worse?
Complicated question. No easy answers. To figure it out, we got to look at the head of the family, Todd Chrisley. Remember, while Kyle was dealing with all this, Todd was building his empire on reality TV, and, well, we'll see he was doing that while pulling off a huge financial fraud scheme.
It's crazy how different their lives seemed. Shows how fake things can be.
So let's get into Todd Chrisley's world. Fraud, tax evasion, and some serious deception. You won't believe what we find out next.
Todd Chrisley, you know, the guy who built his whole thing on being rich and successful, that Southern charm, he had a secret. And that secret was, well, a whole web of financial fraud. It was so big it took down everything he built.
It's crazy how he kept it up for so long. I mean, what was he thinking?
Well, it all started falling apart in August 2019. A federal grand jury in Atlanta, they indicted Todd and Julie, his wife, on 12 counts: bank fraud, wire fraud, tax evasion, conspiracy, a whole 9 yards.
12 counts. That's not just messing up the taxes a little.
Oh no, this was serious stuff. They said the Chrisleys had been cheating banks out of millions of dollars for over a decade. And their scheme, it was pretty clever, actually.
So how'd they do it?
From about 2007 to 2012, Todd, Julie, and a business partner, they allegedly gave banks tons of fake documents to get loans. Fake bank statements, fake audit reports, anything you can think of.
Like they were making up their finances so they'd look rich and get those loans.
Exactly. They were creating this illusion of success, you know, and they used it to get over $36 million in loans.
$36 million? That's a ton of money. What did they spend it all on?
They lived large, fancy cars, designer clothes, huge houses, vacations, everything. But it was all built on lies.
Sounds like it was bound to fall apart. Do they think they could keep it up forever?
Well, things started to crumble. In 2012, Todd filed for bankruptcy, and he left behind a whopping $20 million in loans that he didn't pay.
So they just walked away from their debts. What happened to the banks?
The banks had to take the loss. And get this, the alleged crimes didn't stop there. Their reality show, Chrisley Knows Best, that started in 2014. As they got more famous, made more money, they kept on cheating, allegedly.
So they were committing tax fraud while their show was airing, showing everyone how successful they were.
Prosecutors said the Chrisleys and their accountant, they worked together to hide their income from the IRS. They funneled money through a loan-out company, put it in Julie's name, all to avoid paying taxes.
It's unbelievable. They wanted to look rich and successful, but behind the scenes, they were committing financial crimes. Did they really think they could get away with it?
Todd, he denied everything. He even went on social media saying a former employee was trying to frame them.
Shifting the blame. But did it work?
Nope. June 2022, after a 3-week trial in Atlanta, Todd and Julie Chrisley, guilty on all 12 counts. Conspiracy to commit bank fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States, tax evasion, you name it.
Wow, guilty on all counts. That's a big loss.
It was a huge turning point. In November 2022, Todd got sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, plus 3 years of supervised release after that. Julie got 7 years. Same deal with the supervised release.
That's a long time, especially for financial crimes. What do you think this tells us?
It shows just how bad their crimes were. The judge made it clear actions have consequences. They also had to pay back over $17 million.
From reality TV stars to federal inmates, that's a big fall. What do you think caused it?
Well, it's a story about what can happen when you're obsessed with money and fame, and when greed takes over. It shows that things aren't always what they seem.
Now that we know all this, I wonder, what was Kyle thinking through all of this? Did he know about his parents' illegal stuff?
There's nothing to say Kyle was directly involved in the financial crimes. But you can't ignore the timing, you know. When their world was falling apart, Kyle was dealing with his own problems.
It seems like their legal troubles must have affected him somehow.
Especially with their relationship already being so messed up. And Todd, he talked about Kyle's bipolar disorder and drug problems publicly. That probably made things even worse between them.
Like father, like son, right. The father obsessed with money and status, and the son caught in all this bad behavior.
On the surface, yeah, their crimes are different. Todd's were planned out, all about the money. Kyle's were impulsive, violence, drugs. But could there be a connection deeper down?
That's what we'll look at next. We'll see how Todd's focus on wealth and image might have affected Kyle's path. Okay, so we've learned a lot about the Chrisleys. Todd building his empire on lies, wanting all that money and status. And Kyle fighting addiction and mental health, getting in trouble with the law. Makes you wonder, are those two stories separate, or is there something more connecting them?
Yeah, it's interesting. Their crimes seem different, but the family, how they were, that could be important. Like, did Todd always wanting to look good, have money? Did that make things harder for Kyle, make him more unstable?
Like that saying, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. But is it really that simple? Are we saying Kyle messed up because of Todd?
I don't think it's that easy. You got to think about Kyle's own problems, the addiction, his mental health. Those are real complicated things. Can't just ignore that.
And remember how Todd would talk about Kyle's bipolar disorder and drug use on TV? Did that actually help their relationship or make it worse?
Probably made things worse. It was already bad. And then Todd taking custody of Kyle's daughter, Chloe, because he thought Kyle wasn't fit to be a dad. That pushed them further apart.
Sad to see a family like that. The dad pretending everything's perfect while he's doing all this fraud. And the son struggling with his own problems, maybe because he wanted the same things, money and fame. Complicated, for sure.
Very complicated.
Yeah.
But, you know, there was a time when they kind of made up. Back in 2019, Kyle was on the Chrisley family podcast, and he said it was his fault, not his dad's.
That was a surprise. And Kyle even stood up for his parents after they got convicted, told people not to be too hard on them. Seemed like he was trying to help them through a really tough time.
Yeah, it felt like things were getting better. But then, just weeks after Todd went to prison, Kyle got in trouble again with that assault charge in Tennessee. The timing makes you think, maybe all the stress and craziness with his parents, that made him less stable.
And then the 2024 incident, arrested for assault again, he said it was self-defense and that maybe they targeted him because of his last name. You think he feels the weight of his family's bad reputation?
I think so. The Chrisley name, it used to mean money and Southern charm, but now it's all about scandals and legal trouble. Kyle tried to separate himself, but he probably still feels that connection.
So what's the takeaway? Are we saying Kyle's problems are Todd's fault, or is there something more to it?
It's not that simple. This whole thing shows how our choices and our family, they all mix together, affect each other. It's hard to say if Kyle's life would have been different if Todd had acted differently. But their family, how they were, that definitely played a part.
Like the chicken and the egg, right? Did Todd's obsession with money mess Kyle up, or would Kyle have gone down that road anyway?
It's a question that'll probably keep going. I think it's a mix of things, stuff inside him and stuff outside him that shaped Kyle's life.
The whole Chrisley story is a warning. About wanting too much, about how fame doesn't last, about how our choices affect everyone around us. It reminds us that things aren't always what they seem. Even perfect-looking lives can have dark secrets.
It's also a story about maybe, redemption. They made mistakes, both Todd and Kyle, but they've said they're sorry, they want to change. Can they escape their past? We'll see what happens.
This deep dive into the Chrisley family, it's been fascinating, right? More questions than answers, but we got a glimpse into what can happen when you have money, fame, and family all mixed together. Hopefully it made you think about how our choices, what happens to us, good and bad, it all shapes our lives and the lives of people we know. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.